Welcome back to Switch to Linux and another Distro Wars, and today we are going to look at MX Linux versus Linux Mint XFCE. Of course, I recently just upgraded my writing computer from Peppermint 7 to MX Linux 19.1, and I was actually told by Run with the Dolphin, who runs the project, that if I use 19.2, then the encryption issue would have been solved. Hey, you live, you learn, but I already have it built, and unless it gives me problems, I'm not going to do anything. If it does give me any problems in the next month, I'll go ahead and upgrade to the 19.2, see if that solves problems. If not, the other backup I was thinking of is Linux Mint XFCE. Two lightweight distributions, of course, one of those based on the Ubuntu base, that being Linux Mint, the other one based on a Debian base, and that being MX Linux. I just have to use something lightweight on that particular computer because the system specs are so small and it's almost impossible to open up the bottom of the computer, and even if I were to get in there, the RAM is soldered in and the drive is soldered in. But hey, for $100, it was an excellent computer. And so with all of that, let's go ahead and have a look at the websites first. So MX Linux, this is a cooperative with Antix and former MEPIS communities. It is a lightweight distribution based on Debian, but still having some very powerful and modern applications that many of you might want to be looking for. You can head on over and look at the video here, and Run with the Dolphin is often pops up in several of the different Linux video communities. You can check the comments or things like that. He's a very open guy. You can ask him questions and he will get back to you very quickly. If you head on over to your download options, you do still have a 32 and a 64-bit version. This is something that you do not have with Linux Mint 20, unfortunately, because the Ubuntu base did drop it. Although Linux Mint Debian Edition does have the 32-bit, they don't have the lightweight XFCE build. You also have, if you are running very recent hardware and you need a little bit greater support for the new recent hardware, you can run the Advanced Hardware Stack version. So you can download the Advanced Hardware Stack, which is only 64-bit. Did I say that right? Yes, I did. Only 64-bit, just because it's for the latest hardware. The latest hardware is not going to be 32-bit. So you can go ahead and just grab it from a variety of different places. You can also purchase computers with Star Labs. Actually, that's where my theming for my other computer uses Star Labs theming. Very nice. But anyway, with that, you can go ahead and grab those. We will spin this guy up and have a look at what it looks like. Over on Linux Mint, you can head on over to the download. This is Linux Mint 20. You do have 3 desktop options on Linux Mint 20, although MX Linux allows you to install other desktop options if you want. Over here, we have Cinnamon, Mate, and XFCE, which is the one we are going to be looking at today. You only have a 64-bit version in this latest release, and you are going to have, again, a lot of good software updates, and Linux Mint will have your Flatpaks enabled by default, but it will actually prevent apt from installing Snap by default, because of some concerns that the Mint team have, which I believe are justified. And it is easy to get that back if you want. But if you are wanting to run snaps, Linux Mint's still going to be your better choice. I believe it will be a little bit harder to get running in MX Linux, but I haven't actually tried it either. So now let's go ahead and dive on in, and we will go ahead and start with MX Linux, and we will be back when we are ready to go. All right, so here we are on the MX Linux desktop. When you first boot this up, you are going to get this welcome screen. You can toggle this button down here if you want it to continue to show on startup, or toggle it off if you don't. Over here, we have FAQs, user manual, wiki, tools, tweak, forums, video, contributes, codecs, and popular apps. There's a few things here that are related to just the general working of the system, but there is also another one over here that is a little bit more on dealing with the system itself. So we have our tools, we have our tweaks, and we have our codecs and our popular apps. So these ones here will actually allow you to make some changes. First is codecs. With Linux Mint, you have the option to install your codecs on the installation, but over here on MX Linux, you are going to have to do it through the separate instance here. So the reason for this has to do with free and open source software capabilities. It just happens that the Ubuntu installer has the option to toggle this check mark on the install. MX Linux does not, so we have a very nice link and easy to do. If you hit OK, it's going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and cancel. We also have our popular apps. This is a curated store of various applications that are the most popular. It does have pretty much anything you might actually need. There's a few things that might be missing, but for the most part, you have pretty much anything. I mean, we got WaterFox, we got Pale Moon, we have Google Chrome, we have Brave, Chromium. Variety of different browsers there. If you do want different desktop environments, we have Budgie, we have a GNOME Base, KDE 5 Standard, LXDE, and Mate. So if you are wanting a different desktop environment, you can go ahead and do that. So you can kind of see they do have a lot of software applications here available. We also have other items up here. So stable repos, test repos, Debian backports. So if you are wanting to enable any of these options here, you can actually go ahead and do that. So this is in fact something that when I did my writing computer review, I did things a little bit more of the pure Debian way and a little bit less of the MX Linux way. And some people have commented on that in the video. You can see here that I could actually have just gone right into the package installer, search for LibreOffice, and install this without going through the mess that I actually did. But I'm actually used to running Debian stuff. That's why I did it the way I did it. We also have Flatpak support right out of the box, just like Linux Mint is going to have. And it's I believe it's going to connect itself to FlatHub. Yep, you can see the remote user PPA there just populated with FlatHub, and then we're going to get a list of Flatpaks. So overall, the installation and things, you are going to have a little bit more options in here as far as what's there. It looks, I was going to say, there's not a lot in there. It's because Libre was still selected. So you can grab any of the Flatpaks that are available on FlatHub. This is the same Flatpak repository available on Linux Mint, so this is going to be the same. Linux Mint does not have the easy to access Debian backports. We also don't have the various other testing repo and the various popular applications. So the MX Linux package installer is easy to use, very simple. It's not big and image heavy. So if you're looking for something big and image heavier, Linux Mint is going to do it a little bit better, but that's okay. We also have the MX tools. The MX tools will allow you to create a snapshot of your system. Also, another fun fact is if you start in with MX Linux on your live key, anything that you change, anything that you install, when you go and actually install MX Linux, it's going to take all of those configurations. Meaning you can go through with your live system and you can make the changes and then install it, and whatever changes you made are going to appear on your system. That is what I have been told from the developer in the comments on my MX Linux review that I did recently, and I pinned his comment to the top there so you can actually read it there. We do have options for boot repair, boot options, various cleanup things. So these are good tools. The MX Linux the Linux Mint live key will have the boot repair, but they don't include it on the operating system, which honestly makes a little bit of sense because what's the use of having boot repair on the system if it won't boot? But hey, whatever, you know. Here's a little pop-up. We do have this MX Linux updater. It does tell us that we have updates that we can run. I never ran those updates. Here again is the coder install, and I did say something incorrectly, I think, before we started the show in the comments section. They do have an NVIDIA driver installer. So if you're using this on NVIDIA and having problems, make sure you're running this NVIDIA driver installer. We have a series of other tools. Now there's tweaks. That should be the same thing as in this tweaks panel here. This is another thing that some people were telling me is, oh, rather than manually change everything, you can actually just go ahead and do the changes down here and do everything. Yeah, I mean, and this was honestly pretty close to what I wanted to do anyway, but I'm used to doing things just kind of manual ways. I don't always take advantage of all of the tools given to me. Just know that MX Linux does have them. And by the way, I actually did use these tools when I set up my real writing computer. The shots, the footage that you saw in that other, in the review video was not actually on my writing computer. That was just kind of simulating them through a virtual machine. But you do have those options. A lot of people pointed that out, so I figured I'd just go ahead and point out that, hey, it exists. It's right here. We have our themers over here. We have just a variety of different configuration options inside of your your MX panel. So this guy here is much closer to your typical build. All right, so there is what we have as far as landing on our desktop there. We do have our applications. I did comment that I thought MX Linux was a little bit more bloated than it probably could have been. I'll go ahead and identify the things that I removed from my writing computer because honestly, it's a writing computer. I use it for absolutely 100% unequivocally nothing but writing and producing books. And so I needed to have GIMP, the latest version of LibreOffice, so I can run my language tool grammar checker plugin, which is another free and open source extension for LibreOffice. I want to run Sigil. I wanted to run the Bible study software because since I write a lot of Christian books, I wanted to have something on my computer without relying on the internet, especially since that computer is not often on the internet. And I needed to run Calibri and GIMP, which is already pre-installed. So I did take a lot of things off of mine. I'm not going to say everyone has to. It's just the function of I like my system to not have a lot of things if the computer is dedicated. So I removed Conky. I actually removed GTK hash because I don't need it on that. A variety of other little things. I'm not going to say those are particularly bloat. GTK hash is very helpful, actually. If you are wanting to verify a download, that's going to be easier than some of the other ways. We have Icon Browser, we have Genie, we have the games. I'm not a huge fan of having the games pre-installed, but hey, sometimes they can be fun. We have the scanning tools, Nomax, we have Firefox. Like I got rid of everything here except Firefox because I just don't, I barely even use Firefox on the thing. The thing is almost never, it connects to the internet when I am updating files to my Nextcloud server. That's all I use mine for personally. But overall though, I actually got rid of Clementine, believe it or not. I kept VLC just in case because VLC will handle audio or video, whereas Clementine I believe is just music, but I could be wrong. I got rid of the CD burner, little computer there. I pretty much left the MX tools alone in my own build, and I did upgrade LibreOffice to the latest version using the Debian backports, although I did it the more difficult way. So MX Linux, though, does have a lot of tools that if you don't know how to do a lot of those things that I did on my personal build, they can actually do almost everything I did is actually doable in the MX Linux tools. So cool. But that's one of the great things about it. We have a Debian system with user-friendly tools that makes running your system very easy. As far as other wallpapers, desktop settings, go into your desktop settings here. You can see your icons. You can turn on or turn off your various icons over here. So you can see all that set up there. I like to have my icons a little bit bigger, so we can go ahead and just do that, and those will pull up, and then over here you can hunt around, find whatever wallpaper you'd like to use. This is actually the one I'm using on my writing computer there. So that is actually what MX Linux looks like. Very easy, very lightweight, nice to use. Let's go ahead and see what kernel we are using. We're using 4.19. If you do need the latest kernel, then you might want to run Linux Mint XFCE to get a latest kernel, or you can alternatively run the advanced hardware stack on MX Linux, which is also going to give you a more recent kernel. So that's kind of what we have in MX Linux. Let's go ahead and have a look at Linux Mint XFCE next. All right, so here we are on Linux Mint 20 XFCE 64-bit. You can see our setup is already very traditional. We do have this welcome screen that you can turn off by toggling this checkbox off. I believe it's the opposite of MX Linux, where this one is on by default. MX Linux's will only pop up the first time unless you explicitly check the box. This one will continue to start up until you explicitly uncheck the box. All right, under our first steps here, the first thing that we can now do under Linux Mint XFCE is we can choose our color theming, and we can choose light or dark versions. very nice out of the box. I'm actually become kind of privy to the red recently. Maybe it's a throwback to all that time I spent running Peppermint. We have our system snapshots using, is this Time Machine? Time Shift, Time Machine. That's Apple, isn't it? Over here we have our Time Shift for basically like a Windows restore point if you're new to Linux. We have our driver manager over here. So this will detect any proprietary drivers and give you the option to install those if such a driver exists. Our update manager, and system settings, software manager, and firewall. Let's have a look at the software manager. That's the one thing that we highlighted in MX Linux. I think that the software manager in Linux Mint here, I like it a little bit better. Although I say that the MX Linux does give you more options, more choices. I don't know why I'm having a hard time grabbing the corner there. Maybe it's because it's XFCE, and that's one of the complaints some people have about it. But anyway, we have inside of here, we have a variety of different applications. We have a specific Flatpak spot. So this is just going to tell us the specific Flatpaks that we have. We don't have the back ports, but we should probably have a little bit newer software in some issues. Of course, the one controversial point in the new Linux Mint is that the Chromium browser is not going to give you the ability to download the Chromium browser. I do agree with the people that say if they're going to take out the Chromium browser, at least put something in like the deb version, even if it's a little bit more out of date. I agree with that, but I do agree with blocking the snaps from installing by default. On the philosophical reasons that they did. But nevertheless, nearly every other software package you're not going to have any problem with. There's only one package impacted by that snap issue, and that is Chromium. Over here, when you search for something that a repository and a Flatpak version exists, it's going to show you both of them separately, and you can choose whether you want the Flatpak or the non-Flatpak version. And you can go in and sort by the various types of tools and utilities and things like that. So there's a lot of software that you're going to find inside of your software manager. We do have a firewall setting there. Our system settings inside Linux Mint. This one's being XFCE. The system settings is mostly the same, except MX Linux is going to have its own MX Linux tools. So there's going to be a lot more system settings available over there. Nevertheless, we do have a variety of different color themes. You can see all these Mint X's and Mint Y's. These correspond to all of the different theming options that you have. So you can select whichever one we want. If you're like, oh man, I really like that other original, the original selector, you can always go into your menu here and you can search for your welcome screen and boot your welcome screen back up, and it's always there at the top. So that's what you have there. Here is your various icons. Of course, this is going to also change with that theme changer over there. All right. Let's see if there's anything else in here I want to highlight. I don't think there's anything else there I want to highlight. We didn't really look at the MX Linux updater. It's pretty boring. It just will notify you if there's an update. And I do not recall if there's actually an option that will allow you to hold certain packages back. I think there's not, but don't quote me on that 100%. Here, though, if we see some application that we'd like to hold back, we can actually just find it and just click on that one application, and it's not install updates here, and it's going to install everything but that. We can also right click. We can ignore just this current application if you know something is a particular problem, or if you're like, I just want to hold this one back perpetually, you can ignore all future updates for this package as well. So those are options that you do have, whether or not you want to use them or not. We do have inside of here, we do have a kernel manager. So you can see that we are running the 5.4 kernel here. If we were to run updates, it would probably push us all the way back up to the 040. You do have the ability over here to add and remove some kernels in the system there as well. Have a little bit more flexibility over that. As far as applications given to us, we do have, I would say less bloat, although we do have about a similar amount of system tools. You can see the tools are pretty much the same. We do have the Warpinator here. That's a new application. Image stick writers and formatters, but we don't have an ISO creator to create the ISO image of our system. If you're looking for that, you'll either have to install one separately or MX Linux has that option. Graphics, we have drawing instead of GIMP to make it supposedly easier, except I've been using GIMP and Photoshop for so long, I have no idea how to use the drawing program. I've tried. I'm embarrassed to say that. All right, we also have our Firefox, Hex Chat, so pretty much the same applications there. We have Celluloid for movies and videos. We have Rhythmbox for our music. Rhythmbox is nice and it can do your podcasts as well. You can search for podcasts and use them there. We also have a full LibreOffice suite. Let's go ahead and double check our settings in there. And of course, inside your settings, all the various settings options that you would have and things like that. All right, so inside of here, we have, let's close that down. We have in our LibreOffice, if I can hit the About button there, we're running 6.4.3.2, so very new version of LibreOffice. We didn't show the version in MX Linux, but out of the box, it's 6.1. So this does give us the updated version without having to go into the back ports or anything else. As far as basic use, they're going to be fairly the same. The differences is going to be your just the system tools that you have and maybe some cooler wallpapers. Linux Mint always comes with nice wallpapers. Kind of see what those happen to be there, or you can kind of pick your variety of different ones. For you guys that like the old traditional Linux Mint logo, there you go. You got that one there. And here's the icons. You can do your icons much the same. They do give us the home folder on this one out of the box. And they are also the more standard 48 size there. So there is really your difference. I don't really think you're going to go wrong on either one of these. Ultimately, it just boils down. So which one should you choose? Well, if you need to run the Chromium browser, it's easier to run the Chromium browser on MX Linux than it is on Linux Mint. Linux Mint is going to be the more Debian-based, more up-to-date packages in the general repositories, and it might actually work a little bit better in many instances just on the basis that Ubuntu is really streamlined to work on a lot more hardware devices than is Debian. That being said, MX Linux has done a lot of positive striding to make Debian work on more hardware, and so in that case, you might be fine with either one. If you're on team Ubuntu's like growing horns and is of the devil, you might want to go with the MX Linux to be based on Debian instead of Linux Mint, XFCE, which is going to be based on Ubuntu. If you don't really care and you're looking for the easiest, best user experience, honestly, it might be Linux Mint. So there's really no right or wrong answer here. Each one of them has their advantages. Each one of them has their disadvantages. And frankly, you're not going to go wrong with either one of them. They're both excellent operating systems. They are both going to work with a variety of different hardware and, whatever that may be. So let me know your thoughts. Which is your favorite? Does MX Linux win for you, or does Linux Mint XFCE win for you? Does the Snap debate have any weighing in that, or do you even care about running Chromium or whatever else? And hey, if you've seen the other video, are you Team Neckbeard or Team Suit? Let me know all that stuff in the comments down below. Thank you for all the supporters and the super chatters, in this case of this video here, who have helped support the channel over the years. And you can have a look at patreon.com/TomM, T-O-M-M, or thinklifemedia.com. Thanks for coming along, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.